Hello, everyone, and welcome to Knowledge is Power. Today, we're going to cover DMX controllers for a Christmas or Halloween show. I'm going to show you the type of case, the control board, how it's wired, and just give you a basic overall view. So, for Christmas of 2019, I decided to upgrade some of my controllers. I started to change the style of enclosure that I used. I wanted to use a larger style controller. It's just I think they call it a C1500. It's a very popular box used for cable or phone systems when they install it on the outside of your house. Very common. So this is what was really popular back in the last 2-3 years. This is actually an Alpha Pick 16 inside on it's an acrylic board. So this is an example of what I was using prior to 2019. Put that aside. So let's take a look at what I went to this year. So definitely a larger style box, as you can see, all gray. The main thing is it's deeper. Also, not only deeper, is it's got a insert that you can swap out. So if I ever needed to, I could spend $3 or $5 to put in a plastic insert and change my configuration of what ports and where the holes are located at. If you ever make a mistake on this, it's really easy just to swap this out and replace it, rather than if you had a solid version, which would be like this on the bottom. You'd have to buy a whole new enclosure if you made a mistake or you cracked it. So definitely a good benefit to this style of enclosure. It's about $25-$30. And then you're going to have to buy all the inserts. But I definitely like the versatility of being able to use different configurations on the bottom. So let's take a look at it. Alright, so we have a couple of power supplies. These are 350 watt power supplies. Two of them, they're both 12 volts. These are just the less expensive model. You can find them online. This brand is, I think this is through Holiday Coras where I picked them up. I want to say they were like $28 a pop. If you're going to do a larger display, your power draw is higher, or you just want a higher reliability, you don't want the possibility of one of these failing, definitely recommend a Meanwhile driver. Or there's a lot of people using HP high-end server power supplies. I like these. The Meanwhile I like because they're about $35. They're a good price. You can have a couple spares. The HPs are really expensive. You can get to $200-$300 because those are made for high-end redundancy and larger servers. So good model here. One of the things that I did this year was put fuses in. Got a little lazy years before, and like everybody else, we learn. I didn't put any fuses in. Didn't have any problems, but this year I wanted to make sure that now I'm using two power supplies, larger cases. I'm leaving these on 24/7. I didn't want any possibility of shortage and a fire happening, so definitely fused them. And just put a standard ATO fuse in there. This one's actually a 10 amp. And I have two of them in here. They actually feed a couple 4-wire X-Connect connectors. So I tend to use on my power injection, I use 4-pin, 2 positives and 2 negatives, so 2 different circuits. For the props, that way I can keep the voltage drop down. Also, I like the use of Velcro. Velcro is really nice. Zip ties are good too for some scenarios, but when you have to open things up, it's nice just to be able to take a piece of Velcro, remove it, move your wires around, and then reattach it. So nice addition here. As you'll see, I do have some zip ties in here. These I do not want coming apart. I don't want them pulling on each other and ripping the connections loose. These are all soldered with just electrical tape on the outside. for protection. You can use fancy connectors if you like. It doesn't matter. I'll probably go to a different style connector for power injection next year. But as long as there's no possibility of grounding out, that's your main goal in here. And as you do this more often, you build more of these cases, they'll look better. They'll be better engineered. So as far as the controller is, this is actually a Alpha Pix. It is a 16 port with 3 DMX ports here on the side. Let me see if I can move these cables over. So you can see them here. There's 3 DMX ports, 1 through 3. These allow a lot of legacy controllers that do not have E131 or data over Ethernet, DMX over Ethernet. So these are good too, that you can have your own DMX zones come out of here, universes, and supply your old legacy controllers. If you have LOR controllers, LOR is a great stable controller. They're a little bit pricey, but they do a heck of a good job, and I've never had a failure on it, and I've had LOR controllers for about 6 years now. So good thing to have some of these ports on the outside. Eventually you won't need these. They're starting to phase these out with serial, and you'll have smart boards, but for now this is a good migration. So it's one of the good benefits of a board that has SPI, which is your digital outputs, along with your DMX style for serial. So another thing you'll notice, Ethernet. So I use little 3-foot, 4-foot jumpers to go from the board to the controller. So I tilt the controller up. You'll actually see that I have a Ethernet feed through. It's going to be water resistant, and you can see on this side it's just a Ethernet connection. On the other it's just a feed through connector. And then when I'm done, I usually put the cap back on it. So these are a little bit pricey. I think these are like $6, $7 each, but well worth it in the long run. You don't want to be opening the case, messing around with here with all the wires. This, I only have 8 ports active on this board. Generally you're going to have 16 ports, or almost all your ports in use. Imagine double the wiring in here and trying to mess around or troubleshoot. It's not very, very friendly. So you want to be careful of the way you route your wires. Again, using zip ties, velcros, positioning everything really makes a difference. All right, on to the board input connections. We have 12 volt on this scenario. Each feed is a power supply, so I like to do things that match. So if this is going facing upwards, this is the top up here. The top power is the top power supply. Bottom is the bottom. That way you don't get confused. Make them consistent. If you want to, you can put labels on there, or if you build everything the same, you know how to troubleshoot. Everything is the same. Be real considerate when you start building these controllers. If you just have one, keep a standard, stick with it on all controllers. Eventually you're going to have problems. You're going to troubleshoot, and if every controller is configured, wired differently, you're going to spend a lot of time troubleshooting. So just a little word of advice there. This controller has a 12 volt fan wire on it for temperature to turn on an exhaust fan. I have not used it on this case. I did try it on another one. It never turned on. That may have been something that I made some mistakes on configuration or wiring. So it never did get hot enough to shut down, so I just left it as is. There's also a 4-pin for like your CPU style fans here. That is available too. Moving on, we have these 4-port connectors. I'm definitely very fond of these connectors in a lot of the projects that I run. They use a flathead mini style screwdriver. So we can get a little close up on that. On the inputs, do not solder any of the wires that go in these ports. Just twist your wires, your stranded wires together, or if you're going to use solid, either one. Put them in here and tighten them down. Don't over tighten them. Tighten them down nice and firmly. You'll never have a problem with this type of connector right here. These connectors are also nice because if you're in small places, you can make your connection outside of the case and then push your connector in. So definitely good for tight spaces. These boxes, definitely, even with the larger style box, not a whole lot of room, especially if you have large nubules like I do. So definitely a good thing for these remote connectors. Each connector output on this controller is 5 amps. So be very, very careful when configuring how many pixels that you're going to have. You want to make sure you do not exceed 5 amps. If you can, engineer it where it's only using 75% the consumption of this port as in power. So don't go to 5 amps right at the threshold of the fuse and the controller. Bump it down to 3.5, 4, and then do some power injection. If you're going to exceed that, break your strain up into multiple ports. This is for beginners. If you're advanced, you're going to do all sorts of crazy stuff. Put a couple 100 pixels on one port. You're going to do power injection. You're going to be doing all the math, the footages, power drop, and you're going to test it before you implement it, because math sounds really cool, but not all wires carry the same resistance, and your voltage drop could be more. You could have done a calculation error. Sometimes the solder joints on these pixels aren't that great. You anticipated a larger size wires on your pixel strand. It's actually thinner. There's more resistance. You're going to get more power drop. Your voltage gets to a certain point and your lights start to flicker, don't have the right colors, and you're going to have problems. So if you're a beginner, really stick to the basics, and don't try to use too many pixels per port. So just a little word of advice there. All right, moving on. Again, this is the Alpha Pix 16. There's chips here, output chips. There's 4 of them. One for each bank of 4. Never had a problem with these going bad. Again, if you were to draw too much power, you very well could damage any one of these controllers here, these little ICs. So be very careful. The buttons, not too fond of the buttons. They're not hard to get to. I don't like the configuration of them, but again, for me, I configure it once, I close the box, and I do everything remotely. I don't like to be inside of this box and have it open unless I actually have to. If you have the time and the money, I'd recommend getting one of these, maybe an Alpha Pix 4 that's only $100. If you're new, get the warranty. I think they're charging like $20 or so for a warranty on some of the holiday Coros. Pay for the warranty if you're new. You're going to make a mistake. If you've been doing this a while, you still possibly could make a mistake, but there's less chances. So, get yourself an Alpha Pix 4, put it on your bench, use it for testing, design, learning, troubleshooting. Don't use a live box. Don't use something that you're going to have in production that you can make a mistake on and then have to rebuild. Display, it's a pretty standard LCD display. Does change colors or in the brightness level. That is a nice feature, so you can see it at night. Or if it is night, you can dim it so it's not blaring bright. Other than that, there's not much about these controllers. They're pretty straightforward. I'll get into maybe do another video later about the configuration. If you plug everything in, if you set the config right, these controllers just work. I have never had to go into these configs and alter them from day one unless I'm changing universes. So great for a beginner. They do what they need to do, but you're not going to get anything fancy out of them. You're not going to be able to put a show player on here. You're not going to be able to put an FM transmitter on these. You're not going to be able to run code in the background. You're not going to be able to monitor them. But to start off with, set it and forget it. Plug it in. You know it's going to work. You don't have to worry about it. I'm a big fan. If it works and it works well, it's a great board. So let's kind of give you another little view of the case here. So one of the things that I do like is, you can see on the bottom here, there's an insert on this case. One nice thing about this is you mark all your spots where you want everything, you take it off the case, you drill your holes, you put it back on. Heaven forbid you crack this, you put a big crack in the side, you can no longer use it. You spend $3, $5, you make your own, you can put one back in. These restraints are really nice. These guys here are also very nice for large amounts of cables, like if you're going to run 16 cables through them. Again, we have the Ethernet pass-through cable over here. And I like the width on the box. So again, this is the Holiday Coro box they came out with, I think, about a year ago. I think it was maybe early in 2019. So, good case, nice and deep. Alright, and then you have the other side. So, I like to label things. I label them by controller number, PIX03, and then I have a spreadsheet or a map that says where PIX03 is. Again, once I IP it, I log into it, I never open the box again. But one of the other things that I do like is there is ability to mount another plate over here. Maybe you could put some voltage meters in here or some amperage meters. One of the things I think I'm going to do next year is put a couple amp meters in here, one for power supply, each power supply, and that way I know what the current draw is. So think about putting a plate in here and 2 amp meters that include power consumption, wattage, and power. So that might be a good thing. Also, there's a spot you can put a fan in here. Just drill a, I think it's a 2.5 inch or 3 inch hole. You can put an output on here for a fan. So this is convenient. This top does come off if you need to. These hinges here do separate. I'm looking for a different way to do power injection and distribution within the box. I'm thinking, I picked this up off of Amazon. I believe it was about $70. Maybe looking for something that's a 4 or 6 port, a little bit smaller, but something that I can run out of here that can supply more amperage out to the props and then distribute it out in the props. So for example, you'd have your input coming in here from one of the power supplies, then out of here you may have a 20 amp fuse, 15 amp fuse, whatever it may be depending on your prop size. From here this could feed 2 or 3 props once you're at the location. So this would get you a good 20-30 feet from the box and then distribute it from there if you needed. So one good advantage to this. Also, I like the quick connectors. So if you look at this, these have you can put your own cables in there, and then you can put a crimp on them. There's a rubber seal you can put on top, and the wires, you just poke a hole in the back of this connector, then just pushes straight on and locks in. You're going to find these connectors in automotive RVs. You're really going to find them in the ham industry. So this is a nice little setup here. So I'm going to give it a try in one of my cases. Maybe something down here. I'm not sure. I got to figure out how the wires are going to route from the top of the box into the bottom to come out the bottom ports. So not sure how I'm going to do it now, if it's going to be sideways or whatever, but definitely want to keep out of this area because I want to put a fan in here. Another possibility is I may have another box with just power, do another dual power supply box with this in it, and then attach the grounds together between these two. So I'm going to do a little research and based how I'm going to set up my props and where they're going to be, and we'll figure that out later. So I may do another video on this later. Thanks for watching the summary video on my controller setup for 2019. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below.